Hi everyone, my name is Alicia, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Alicia.
I gotta take a minute to relax after that. I love what you said about sobriety, just having so much fun, right? I thought too when I came in here that my life was a death sentence. I didn't think I was gonna have any fun at all. So I just want to read this one thing that I picked up on. Somebody had told me about it in a meeting a long time ago, and it was, you guys may already know about this, but it's Dr. Bob's third step prayer. And I love it because this is exactly how I felt when I came in here. The night that I surrendered, actually. And it goes something like this. It says, Dear God, I'm sorry about the mess I've made of my life. I want to turn away from all the wrong things I've ever done and all the wrong things I've ever been. Please forgive me for it all. I know you have the power to change my life and can turn me into a winner. Thank you, God, for getting my attention long enough to interest me in trying it your way. God, please take over the management of my life and everything about me. I am making this decision to turn my will and my life over to your care, and I'm asking you to please take over all parts of my life. And then it goes on from there. The night that I came in here, the night that I finally surrendered to this, I was at a Relay for Life in my town, my hometown, which is in Hopkinton. And I was sitting there, and I'd been coming around AA for about 4 months, and I was drinking during that time, and I knew that I had to stop drinking. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to, live my life without alcohol. All the people I knew drank, my family drank, everybody, just my whole life was around it, but I knew something was wrong. And I went to this Relay for Life, and I remember just sitting there, you know that cry for help? It's like, oh my God, please, my life is a freaking mess. I need to do this, please help me. And I sat there and they dimmed the lights, and all of a sudden, like up in the bleachers, right, they light these luminaries, and they have the word HOPE spelled out, and it just lit up. And I was like, oh my God. Like there's hope, right? There's hope, and I can do it. And I went to that night because it would give me something to do so I wouldn't drink that night. That was the first thing. What preceded that was, I don't actually, unlike Jeremy, I have like a really bad memory. And I often wonder if it's age or if it's just long-term alcohol abuse, I don't remember my first drink. I remember in 3rd grade, they showed this video of all these kids like getting hooked on drugs and how bad it is and all that kind of stuff. And I remember looking at it, and it's a tactic, right, to scare you, look at the problems that you can, get into, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember sitting there going, oh my God, that is so cool. Like, I want to do that. Like, it was just something so, alluring about it. I remember that. I remember that feeling. And then I remember in 5th grade, we had all of these foster kids come into the house. That's where I was introduced. All these teenage foster kids coming into the house, and that's where I was introduced to smoking, smoking cigarettes, Winston cigarettes behind the gas station, and sips of beer and trying to light pot seeds, to get high off of and stuff like that. And then I went and I was actually in my 5th grade, I was actually bullied for an entire year. I had to go to a new school, and I got really depressed, and I did not know how to express my feelings. I remember my mom saying, they tried to arrange me to go in to see some guidance counselor. And so I went in to see her, and I was sitting there, and she looks at me and she goes, it's okay to cry. And I remember looking at her, and I got up and I walked out. I don't know why I felt that way. I don't know if I was born alcoholic, or if I developed it over time. I just know those were the kind of feelings that I had as a kid. And I was also, the values of my family were, you don't show weakness. You kind of, you force yourself through any kind of problem. You don't talk about it, you suck it up and you kind of move on, and I thought those were the things that I was supposed to do. I had a brother who was bipolar, who had serious mental health issues, was hospitalized a number of times, had nervous breakdowns, and my mom would, never talk about it. We couldn't talk about it in my family. This brother, I remember having a fit. I don't know if you guys have any experience or know anybody who can, off medication, can act, psychotic. But he came up and threatened to kill me, like all of this just crazy stuff. And We weren't allowed to talk about it, right? It was an embarrassment. So anyways, right when I went into middle school, I learned a lot about smoking pot before school and drinking beer. And you know what? I gained all of these friends. It was the most amazing thing. I thought, oh my God, I'm like with the in crowd now. And that just perpetuated right through high school. Most of high school, I don't remember. I was a daily drinker by the time I was a junior in high school. And I barely graduated. Matter of fact, it's interesting because I was at my son's, my oldest. He graduated from high school last night. And this is one of those kids who it has been a tremendous struggle to get him through school. And it's not because he isn't a good kid, because he really is a good kid. I love him to death. He's just like me. You know what I mean? You know, he had all the teachers loving you, but it's like, oh, this kid, you know, just really not supposed to do it that way. You know, you're not supposed to cut corners. You're not supposed to cheat on your tests. You know, you're supposed to do the right thing. And I remember my dad always telling me, you know, Alicia, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's what I always say to Connor now, too. And I look at that and I say, you know what? The fact that he graduated last night, I was so psyched because I could be there sober. And I could just enjoy that moment with him, you know? And this is kind of an aside, but you know what he said to me? He said to me last night, which got me like so teary-eyed. I went up to him, I said, Connor, I love you, I'm so proud of you. And he looked at me and he goes, Mom, we did it. You know? And I was like, oh my God, I was not crying again. You know, it's been a struggle, but I've been able to do it sober. When I was a senior in high school, I almost didn't graduate, but my parents had a lot of connections, and somehow they did something, and I was able to graduate. I think the sisters just wanted me to get out of school at that point. Went on to college. You know, it took me 12 years to graduate. Because, you know, in my family, you had to be something, you know, to be important. Like, you either had to make a lot of money, you had to have a lot of education, you had to be popular. You know, any one of those things, you had to have something special. So I was always trying to get my mom's attention somehow. And so, you know, I go off to college and I figure, well, you know, I'm not such a great student, so I'm going to leave and I'm going to become a ski bum for a year. So I figured I'd go up to Vermont and ski up there for a year, which I did. And I joined the ski team, which I never raced, because they had pit parties every Tuesday, and the race was on Wednesday, so I never made it. And that didn't seem to work out so well, so then I went home, then I went down to the Cape. I don't know if any of you guys ever did that circuit, you know, like you kind of do I grew up in the restaurant business, so I was a bartender and a waitress, so, you know, it's like skiing and bartending up in the winter, and then you move down to the Cape and you do the same thing. It's like a cycle, you know. And that didn't work, so I figured, well, I'll go back to school. I'm not going to give up on school, you know, so I go back to school for a couple years, can't make it, drop out, decide I'm going to become a whitewater rafting guide, you know. Honestly, I was always searching for something to make me feel better. I had no idea. Well, when I came back from Maine, my excursions, I used to run these whitewater rafting trips for all my friends, and I came back, and my brother-in-law got sober, it was about 30 years ago. And I remember talking to my sister, who was a therapist, and that could be a blessing and a curse, right? And no offense to any therapists that are out there. And I remember saying to her, you know what, I think I have a problem drinking too. And of course, in my family, you tell one person, it's like telling 50. I'm not kidding, I've got this big Italian family, and it's like, you know, lots of siblings, and the youngest out of 6, so it's a big deal, everything, you know, everything, it seems like everything's a big deal. So it goes down, you know, my sister tells my mother calls my father calls my other 2 sisters, my brothers, my aunts get in on it. I mean, it's like, oh my God, I really don't have a problem, relax, you know. And they were like, no, you gotta go. So I ended up going into a detox in Lynn, Massachusetts, Mount Pleasant Hospital. And which was a culture shock in itself, right? I mean, I was like, I had never experienced anything like that. And I remember going in there thinking, oh my God, these guys are so dramatic. You know, this is not a big deal. I don't need to be here, you know. And you know, the detox at that time was 2 weeks. 2 weeks you could go to detox. You know, they had a gym. They had like a lunch buffet, you know, massage room, I mean, all this sort of stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this is great, you know, give me a little reprieve. And not only that, but I was flunking out of school, so by going to detox, you know, I figured I had a good excuse why I was flunking. You know, my parents wouldn't get so mad at me for spending all that money in college, but ended up there, and the guy told me I should go to a halfway house in Lynn. So I spent 6 months at the Ryan House in Lynn. I don't even know if it's still there, but again, huge culture shock. I had no idea. The problem was is that, I had an eating disorder at that time as well, and I was not addressing that. When I went to the halfway house, I was put in this place where, and I only speak from my own experience, but I was put in this place where I was in a house, it was co-ed, and most of the kids there were either court-ordered or, actually 90% of the kids there were court-ordered. They were off the streets. They were just people I had not necessarily been exposed to before. So instantly, my little brain, I'm like, oh, I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. My God, if my family knew this, they'd take me out of here in 2 seconds, right? This is the way my brain was working. And of course, I'm there for 30 days. What does my father? This goes to show you. He has no idea, so he feels bad for me, so he shows up with a brand new, Mazda coupe for me. These kids are off the street, and here comes my dad, and drives up, oh, here, honey, you're doing so good, whatever. Oh, thanks, Dad, I didn't have a clue. I totally did not have a clue. And, at that time, I was introduced to the steps, too. But that was at the time where, for me, I didn't hear a lot of talk about the steps. I did not understand Big Book Step Study. I had never even heard of it, actually. I did the 4th step. It was like the biographical kind, you just kind of write your life history, blah, blah, blah. Read it to somebody, and okay, that's all I had to do. No mention of 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. That just wasn't part of it. And actually, at the time, I don't think you were even allowed to speak at a meeting until you were like 90 days sober. They were pretty hardcore. Pretty hardcore. But anyways, I stayed sober. But the problem was is that I thought that my life was just that. It had ended there. This was my life, and that's it. Like, I had to get rid of all my other friends. I couldn't, all of that sort of stuff. And quite frankly, it didn't last. I wasn't addressing the issues, the underlying issues. Alcohol is but a symptom, right? It's all the stuff that's underneath that is a problem. I was not addressing that. And B, I heard at a meeting not that long ago, it was like, we do these steps to get us back into the mainstream of life. That's why we do these steps. When I came around this time, I wanted a life. I knew I had to stop drinking. My problem was I was so scared that I was not going to have anything else. Like, my life was coming to an end. I didn't know that because my experience before had said, no, I'm going to live under this little AA umbrella, and that's it. Like, I can't say boo, outside of AA halls. And that's not the truth. So when I had come back in, and I was concerned about all that stuff, and I was basing all my experience on AA, anyways, let me back up just for a second. So I stayed sober for about 4 years. And, I have to say what I did gain from that was I was first introduced to prayer and meditation at that point. And I had grown up Catholic, did the whole thing, and I'm absolutely not bashing Catholicism, because for me it is my faith, and I love it. But I did not understand anything other than, you're supposed to do this, you go to church, you go to confession, blah, 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 and that's all you have to do, right? So I remember starting that practice of prayer. I'd get up at 5 in the morning, and I'd have that quiet hour. Nobody was up. Put on some music, I'd read some meditation books, and there was something so peaceful about that. Something it shifted me. I don't even know. God works in my life when I don't even know He's working, right? And I held on to that. Well, unfortunately, I am still not addressing most of my the underlying reasons. And I was in a relationship with somebody who was also sober. And this is the thing about, there are many people in our program, and Stick with the Winners. Well, this gentleman, he had 8 years at the time. I was surprised, and I thought, oh my God, this is great. He knows everything, right? He's been sober all these years and all that sort of stuff, so this is big stuff. And, well, after about 2 years with him, I found out, like, the entire year prior to that second year, the end of that second year, he'd been cheating on me with somebody, right? And I found out, and it drove me back home, and it drove me to believe that AA sucked. Because I thought that's what AA was. I thought that's what AA was. And I remember shortly after that, And my sister was going through this charismatic movement in the church, right? And there was this healing service, and her husband, my other brother-in-law, had gone to a healing service and prayed that he would be healed of his alcoholism, and he went there, and lo and behold, he was healed. So I figured, hey, you know what? If God can work like that, my little genie in a bottle, I pray long enough, you know, and then I can be healed of it too. So I went to the same healing service like a couple months later. I'm like, okay, if that person points over to me, you know, somehow or whatever, that means that is a sign that God is healing me of this alcoholism. Not to say God can't heal, but God heals in my understanding in different ways, right? And anyway, so the woman was, I think, just walked by me or something like that, and I said, oh, that's a sign I'm healed. And I ended up going out, and I went into Boston, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, and I picked up my first glass of wine. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, what are they talking about? Kind of you were saying, like nothing happened. Like I said, okay, so I felt a little nauseous. I remember that. I took the train home, and I was like, you know what? It's no big deal. I don't know what the hell they're making all, you know, this is not a big deal. They're so dramatic. Yeah. And I thought, I can do, you know what? They don't know what they're talking about. I got God in my life. I got God in my life. That's all I need, right? I pray to Him, and I'm good. And I ran for 18 years. And I'll tell you, it was slow at first, that progression. But you know what? By the time I came back in here, my drinking was worse. Even though on the outside, I seemed to be getting along with my life. I got married, I had 3 kids. I actually finally finished my college, got my college degree. And I looked like I had it all together. Because you know what? I had learned, that chameleon they talk about? I had learned to play the game. I could be anything you wanted me to be. I'm in sales. Right? I could be anything you wanted to be. I could dress anyway. I could hang out at the bars and wear, moccasins and feather earrings and leather coats one day, and then I could be in my Brooks Brothers suit the next day, and I could just play the game. And I did. I played the game really well. And nobody really knew, except for my family, when they would occasionally bring it up and say, Alicia, I think you have a drinking problem, and then I just wouldn't talk to them for like 2 years or something. Because they didn't know what they were talking about. I knew. I had that self-knowledge. Look, not only that, but I was in therapy for many years. Right? My sister was a therapist. I got this down. I studied philosophy in college. I knew what God was. Especially when I drank. God, I had the best conversations about God. It just, oh my God, I'm so insane. Self-knowledge got me nowhere. Self-knowledge I had no idea. It wasn't just about knowing who God was or saying I had God. I had to trust and rely upon God. I had to trust and rely upon God. I had to bring God from up here, into my heart, right? I had to possess that, and I did not know how to do that. I just didn't know how to do that. So, my drinking was crazy. And I remember raising the kids, and I thought, okay, I'm going to stop, but I'm not going back to AA. But when the kids get to the point where they start saying, Mom, why are you drinking? Then I'm going to stop. My oldest would say, Mom, why do you have a glass of wine? Why do you drink wine every night? With dinner. And I said, well, the doctors say that if you have 1 or 2 glasses of wine, it's really good for your health. And then I thought, well, what? By the time they get up and they start, if they ever see me pour, wine in my to-go cup, which I always did before we went out, then I'll stop. And of course, we were heading to my mother's house, and God knows I can't drink like I want to over there, so I always put my coffee mug and I fill it with wine before I go, because about that 10-minute ride, I had to have some wine. And I remember the kids, and I'd always shoo them out. All right, go get in the car, I'll be right out, And sure enough, my oldest came walking in, and he saw me with a big old wine bottle, pouring it in my coffee mug. Yeah, but he doesn't really know. It's really not going to bother him much, It was always, when it gets to this point, I'm going to stop. When it gets to that point, I'm going to stop. 4th of July is coming. After 4th of July, I'll stop, because I can't stop for 4th of July. It was that whole thing. I thought I could stop whenever I wanted to stop. Right? It's not a problem for me. I can stop. And you did an awesome job about describing the powerlessness of alcoholism. I did not understand that alcohol was calling the shots. I only understood that once I did this work through the book. So anyways, 18 years later, my life is a mess. I wasn't coming back to AA. I tried smart recovery, moderation management, women for sobriety. I go there. There's like 3 women. They're all drunk, talking about how this works. I swear to God, the leader is drunk, and she's sitting there, and she's like, and they immediately, oh my God, right? And so, and the thing, and then I get on the chat rooms, for smart recovery and the ABC, and I'm not putting it down. Some people, my sister actually decided that she is, she's not alcoholic, but she doesn't want to drink. She's doing the smart recovery program. Like I did, get in the chat rooms and you do the ABC, and the rational recovery, and a lot, they actually have some pretty good practical advice there. They don't have the God component, right? And that's why she does it. She doesn't want to be labeled an alcoholic or whatever. She's got her own journey, but what the problem was for me? I needed the camaraderie of the meetings. I honestly, because I had been in that before and I missed that. I missed the fact that other people were trying to stay sober, that I could come here, I could talk about my problems, that you guys got me, that I could maybe reach out and talk to somebody I could trust. So, of course, I came back and I ran, and I was, the time I came back and I was like, please God. I think I hear it all through the halls. People say this. They go like 5 towns over because they don't want anybody to see them in their own hometown, right? And so I'm like, please God, please God. And I do business in a fairly large area, and I'm like, I don't want to see anybody I know. And of course, I go to this all-women's meeting. There's at least 4 women that I know there. And I'm like horrified, thinking, oh my God, I can't believe they see me here. They're going to know I have a problem, and and this one woman approached me, and I just started bawling. I'm like, she's like, honey, we're all here for the same reason. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. And she's like, no. So anyway, it was because of her. I just kept coming back, So I kept drinking for that 4 kind of months, and that led me to that night. And I said, you know what, God, I don't know what it means. All I need to know is that I can't drink today, and I'm just going to give it a shot. What else do I have? I had lost everything in my life, I felt like, at that point. My marriage was like a freaking wreck. My finances were a freaking wreck. My physical, appearance was a freaking wreck. Everything was a mess. I had nothing left, And just as a side note, it's really funny because the month before I actually, or during that 4-month time, I remember picking up a book. And it said, and the name of the book was The Friendship Crisis. Because I couldn't understand. I had lots of friends, but I really didn't. And I was reading this book to figure out how to do that. And I didn't know it was me. I have to tell you something really funny, okay? Just also as an aside. I have because my mind is not so good, I have all these little reminders that go off on my phone. And one of the tools that the program has taught me is, how can I be of service today? And because I don't always think of it, I put a little reminder every day, and just to have it, to say, how can I be of service today? And that's just what popped up. How can I be of service today? And I thought that's kind of interesting. So, of course, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, so I ended up coming back in here, and I had a therapist at the time. I still see her. And she was the one who told me about Big Book Self-Study. Can you believe that? Not all therapists are even aware. She's not in the program. But I remember talking to her, and she said that she had a client who had done this thing called Big Book Step Study, and it completely changed their life. So that was kind of like when the seed was planted, So I came in, I was sober for a couple of years. I figured I didn't really have to do the steps because I was okay. And you know what? And I hung around a lot of people that felt the same way, right? And, it wasn't that important. I didn't get the underlying causes or condition for the issue. And I didn't really understand what alcoholism was. Anyways, fast forward a couple of years, took me a few years, and I was praying for a sponsor, because I had lots of sponsors prior to that, that I would call occasionally, have coffee with occasionally, and they would listen to me, they would carry my BS, What is that? They say, they didn't carry the message, but they helped carry the mess. And God bless them. But I knew that something had to change still. I was still feeling that irritability, the discontent. And I went into this meeting in Framingham, and this woman was there, and she, you know, it's like about 3 feet high, and she, long-term sobriety, and she was just, you know, like when you know somebody speaks the truth and you can hear it, it just kind of like a knife goes right through, and you're like, oh my God. And she was talking about Big Book Step Study, and I was like, oh, I gotta meet her. So I went over, and she's like, why don't you call me sometime? I said, okay. I didn't know what I was getting into, you know. And so I went and I met her at a meeting, and you know what? I heard you guys talking about living life and practicing tools to help you live life. I thought once you get sober, like I said before, you know, you put down the drink and everything would be okay. I didn't know there was all that crap underneath I had to deal with. And I wanted to. I was at that point where I was like, oh my God, please help me. So she's like, all right, let's go through the book. It was the first time in my life that I understood what the allergy was, what it really meant, that I was powerless over alcohol. I never understood that alcohol controlled the shots. I absolutely, called the shots, absolutely had no idea. I had no idea that my body was different, that it processed alcohol differently. I had no idea that there was insanity in my mind because, oh my God, does that mean I have a mental health issue? Because if I have a mental health issue, then there's something wrong. See, I carried all the shame around with me for years. I didn't know it. I had it though. It was like this really evil, corroding thread that went right through my family, handed down generation to generation. And I had that, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. So, in looking about that insanity and why I did the same things over and over, oh, I can handle it, you know what, nothing's really going on. I can get wasted that night, wake up in the morning, get the kids off to school, I'm okay. I can make it to work, I'm okay. I didn't get into a car accident. I didn't, whatever. I didn't cheat on my husband, well, I did 20 years ago, but I do it now. So, I'm okay, I've grown up. Look at everybody else, they're drinking like that. I had to do this kind of work in order for this thickhead to understand that it's more than just the drinking, right? So go ahead and do all that fourth and fifth. And I have to tell you that for me, probably one of the most important things in this, which had some of the biggest impact, was when I was doing the turnarounds and the fourth and fifth step, or the fourth step. And in looking at that part, well, here I am, I'm thinking, all right, I used to run a women's faith group at my church, right? It's so funny, isn't it? It's like, are you kidding me? And, thinking, okay, I could get up there and talk the best of it with people and all that sort of stuff, and I had no idea. I really didn't, I only knew what I only knew, or whatever that saying is, and anyway, so coming back in, and when you're doing the fear inventory, they, ask you, where's that fear, when is the earliest memory of that fear, I forget the second one, but the last one where it says, how would it be different if I trusted and relied upon God? In that constant question on every single fear that I had. And all of a sudden I saw my life so differently. I thought to myself, here I am the whole time thinking I had God in my life. See, back then, God was kind of like on the back burner. See, he knew my heart, right? He knew I was a good person. I didn't really mean to do these things. I really didn't mean to lie to you. I really didn't mean to take this. Or I didn't mean to drink Dad's best 500-year-old bottle of wine. It was just there, and I was being cordial by offering it to my friends. I didn't mean to do any of that stuff. But God knew I was a good person. God knows I'm a good person. And he kind of laughs a little bit when I get drunk. I'm not bad, I'm just, I'm a little naughty, I had no idea. And it totally hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my God, here I am. This whole time I had no idea that I was actually supposed to trust and rely upon God. Because living that kind of lifestyle was going to be very boring. I knew that lifestyle was out there, but what did that mean I was going to become, right? And there was no fun in that. Me being the impulsive, kind of free-spirited person that I always wanted to be, or try to act, or whatever I was. And I didn't want to do it. And I remember feeling just like that prayer talked about, It's like, God, I made a mess of my life. I need help. I need help. My God, I can't believe I'm even admitting that I need help, but I need help. And that's like miraculous as far as I'm concerned. I can't do this anymore. I know I need you guys to help me with it. So going through that and then constantly seeing like the dishonesty. Like I always thought I was an honest person, right? I never knew how much I lied to myself about things. It was uncovered when I was doing the turnarounds. I never knew how much emphasis I put on the expectation, of always feeling I was never good enough. I could never live up to your expectations. Oh my God, what are these people going to think of me? What are these people, oh, God, because God knows it's all about them, right? And what their expectations are. I had no idea. I always had to be something other than what I was. I didn't know that the whole point was just to be right sized. And then I'm okay just with all the little, crazy, quirky things about me. That's okay. It has taken me a long time to actually finally, not just recognizing it, again, it's not just a self-knowledge, but internalizing it. And that's the difference for me. So having gone through that process and talking about it with my sponsor, and more importantly, is coming to these meetings, because I can go to a lot of different types of meetings, and I do. The Big Book Step Study is where I get my food for my soul, though. Because I need to hear other people and how they apply these principles. Because you know what? I don't know about you, but for me, it's not easy. Living God's will for me, is not easy. I thought it was really not a big deal. Oh yeah, after you go through the 4th and 5th, I'm looking at it, like, yeah, take all this stuff, I'm in. I'm in. You know what? Whatever. And then all of a sudden, when push comes to shove and the rubber hits the road, now I gotta do it. That it's not easy for me. And it is a lifelong process, and so what I understand. And so I work on my amends because it asks in the Big Book, like you talked about, to what extent am I willing to go? I'm either walking towards God or I'm walking away from God. God is either everything or He's nothing. What is my answer to be? What is my choice to be? And today, after having had a spiritual awakening, because finally in my life, I experienced this psychic change where all of a sudden I got it. I'm like, oh, not that I figured it all out, but I understood what they were talking about for the first time in my life. And I realized, yeah, I get this thing called alcoholism. I have a problem. I struggle with addiction. And let me tell you something, it's not just alcohol, right? It can be anything that makes me feel good, that takes me out of any time that I'm feeling bad. If something's there that it's going to comfort me somehow, I can go just zoom right in on it and like, oh, give me more. It's just the nature of the beast, So as if I had cancer, I have to address it. It's called complete acceptance that I have this disease, and I have to be willing to go to any length. But along with that too, and having had that spiritual awakening, I finally, I think, started to develop an understanding of what humility is about. Because, see, my whole life, as we talk about, can be I was so self-centered. Everything revolved around me and blah, blah, blah. I didn't understand that too until I started doing this work. But God was kind of on the back burner. See, I didn't know how to let Him in. I didn't know that I could actually have a relationship with God, that God could be present in the moment with me at all times. And when I did the work and finally understood, made that connection, everything changed. Like the lens, the glasses that I was wearing just seemed to get a new prescription. And I finally saw, God isn't out here watching all these things happen and like these bad things happen to me. God's a lot, God is cursing me, and all that. Because I understood that it was me the whole time. It was me that was bringing this stuff on constantly in my life. I was the me, although I like to point my finger at people, places, and things, and it's everybody else's fault. It was me. It was my reaction to things, or the things that I was doing that would set up for the fall, and it was just constant. And so now God, I look at that and see God, for me, allows some things to happen only so that I can learn from them. I used to hate when people said that to me too. I'm like, screw you. You know what I mean? You're not going through what I'm going through. You can't tell me that. But you know what though? I've been through it enough in my life today that I can actually see it's actually true. And if I have God in my life, what do I have to fear? Right? And I really believe that today because His presence for me is so strong then everything else is kind of passive. You know what I mean? It just doesn't have the weight that it used to have. And so I'm dealing with my mom who's 90 years old, and she and I had a really, really rough relationship when I was growing up. And she said to me yesterday, whatever, I stopped by for some coffee, and my dad passed away about 3 years ago. They were married 65 years, and she is really struggling because she is really up front and face with her mortality. Everybody's dying, people get sick, the whole bit. And the interesting thing is, as much as we had such a brutal relationship, all of a sudden she's like calling me about these things. Because when I get together with her, I'm always talking to her about faith. And I'm always talking about, the thing is, if I have real faith, like if I am, which is something I always wanted but never had before, if I have that real faith and I have nothing to fear, then it's okay, because God's going to take care of me. God will always be with her. And for some reason, I think it's resonating with her, because she calls me with this stuff, and she never would have done that before, right? And yesterday I was talking to her, and she said, I just can't believe how much you've changed. I can't believe how much you've changed. God knows I've got a long way to go. God knows I've got a long way to go, and He's got a great sense of humor. Thank you. I just, I try to practice the best that I can every day. I'm able to be there for other people today. I'm able to think outside of myself, instead of, oh my God, I've got 50 million things I got to do today. And so now I get my little reminder that says, how can I be of service, to others, right? Because isn't that what it's about? In order to get rid of the self-centeredness, I have to get out of my head. And that means thinking about other people. And the more I do it, the more I practice it, the easier it gets, and that becomes more of my lifestyle than the opposite. And that's the gift. It's a miraculous program. I love you guys so much for doing this and just being out there to support me. I'm going to end by just saying something somebody told me a long time ago. It's about support. There are two types of trees, I guess, the largest trees in the world. The redwoods and the sequoias. And I could totally be screwing this detail up, but this is the gist of it, okay? The redwoods, the sequoias the redwoods are taller. One of them are tall. Redwoods are taller, yet they have the deeper root structure. It goes all the way down, like way far down. And the sequoias have a very shallow root structure. However, when a storm comes and the tempest is out there and the wind is blowing, the redwoods are the ones that always fall down, even though they have a really deep root structure. And the sequoias don't. They stay standing. And the reason why is because the sequoia root structure is integrated. They hold one another up. Their roots, although they don't go deep, they remain connected all through the bottom. And to me, that's kind of like how AA works, right? So it doesn't matter. I can come in here and I can be a one-man show, but I'm eventually going to fall unless I hold on to you. My sponsor taught me that the true gift of sponsorship is she's going to teach me how to put my hand in God's hand and then walk along. We all do that together. Well, one hand in God's and one hand to the other person in AA, and then we make it. And up until this point, that's exactly what I have experienced. So if you're coming around and you're just thinking about this process, I'm telling you, I don't know if I would have stayed sober had I not done this process. I really don't. I don't know if I could have. I never would have understood the components of the disease or the I just never would have really gotten it. So it is a gift. So if you're thinking about it, please, as my sponsor would say, you can't afford not to. You have to uncover to discover in order to recover. So, having said that, I thank you all very much, and God bless.